So with a story like this, it's your soul story, so close to your own. This is again not an autobiography, but how do you separate what actually happened to you, the actual history with you're creating a work of art here. You want us to come away with a definite thematic impression. I assume maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe it's just a story, and I'm putting too much
No,
on.
it's my heart. Well, how do I draw the line?
Yeah, well,
Um,
how do you separate yourself and your personal experiences enough to not get in your way when you're making the hard decisions of what actually needs to happen for the book?
I think that what's true about the book has to do with emotion. So, what's true about the book has to do with Junebug's hunger to be nurtured by her mother. It has to do with a desire to express herself when she's feeling held back. So, those are the things that are true. But the rest of what happens in the story is what the characters need to discover. So there's sort of like a setting that is grounded in reality. Newton Highlands, what it was like in 1980, what my neighborhood was like, what it felt like to walk down the street. All of those things are in the book that are true. But what they do is they just kind of lay out, I don't know, I'm thinking about records laying out a groove. Like they just kind of lay out a like a track that the needle can go around and the story can get told, and the rest of it is fiction. So I feel like the characters drive the story, and the part about it that's true is how I know I'm getting to the right stuff is if it feels like the real story, if it feels like truth, even if it's fiction. Does that make sense?
I think it does, and I'm definitely feeling that metaphor with the record player with the
The record
groove.
player with a groove.
Yes, mwah. That's going in my next workshop. Well, I assume that this is a story that you couldn't have written in 1983, maybe not even in the 90s or the early 2000s. That you had to have some distance from in order to be able to approach it, not objectively, not necessarily, but with enough distance that you can put the book out there without well, I don't know what the penalty would be for putting too much of your personal story in there, but
Well, it's 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 a story that that a lot of people need to hear because there are a lot of June bugs out there. There are a lot of kids right now, and have always been a lot of kids who need to know that they're not alone. That life isn't perfect, and the adults who raise us aren't perfect. And sometimes what we need is not what we get in our own homes. Um, so those are things that are always true, unfortunately. But that's why we need to have books about that.
well, I assume that if we could put a book in a time machine and send it back to 1983, for sure it would be a DeLorean. I think that may be 2 years after.
Definitely.
Uh, but if you could send it back to yourself and you could read this as a teenager, what do you think that experience would have done for you?
Oh, I would have loved it because it would have let me know that that there was somebody else like me out there. I really loved fantasy and science fiction as a young adult, and I would have been drawn to the magical, realistic parts of Trowbridge Road. Um, Junebug has an incredible imagination, and her friendship with Ziggy Carlo helps her to sort of harness her own belief in magic and in her own power. And the magical elements in the book that come from their make believe world would have been something that I would have really recognized myself in. But I also feel like 11-year-old me would have really liked the fact that Junebug is taken care of, even though things aren't easy for her. And she does have love and support, and she does find her own courage. And I would have really liked hearing that story.
Well, other than you back as a teacher, who would you say is the ideal reader for this? I couldn't decide for certain if this was middle grade or young adult or some happy combination thereof, but I'm well past either of those age groups and very much enjoyed it. Who was the ideal reader for this?
I think everybody is the ideal reader for this book. It's being marketed as middle grade, and so I guess the ideal reader is 10 and up. But I would be really comfortable putting it in the hands of middle school readers and high school readers and adults as well. So hopefully it speaks to many different levels. I thought that Candlewick, who's my publisher, I thought they were really wonderful in that they were willing to take this, even though it didn't fit completely neatly into one age genre, that they believed in the story as a middle grade story. And but I think that it speaks for older readers as well.
Oh, it's working out for him. Good looking
yeah,
out.
So far.